Since the early days of horror, movies like Dracula and Frankenstein could barely manage a runtime of 70 minutes. In recent years, it looks like Hollywood is having the opposite problem as it keeps cranking out horror flicks seemingly designed to test your patience. The Hellraiser reboot was the longest entry in the franchise. Midsommar was 150 minutes long. So if you miss the days when you could watch a solid slasher or creature feature in under an hour and a half, this list should have you covered. In a way, short and sweet horror is more effective, since it dumps you in the deep end, scaring the crap out of you from the get-go. So with that in mind then, I'm Ellie with What Culture here with 10 more great horror movies under 90 minutes. Number 10, Lights Out, 81 minutes. In 2013, David F. Sandberg released a spooky short called Lights Out. Despite being under 3 minutes, it was scarier than almost any movie released that year. Due to the short's positive reception, Sandberg was given funding to adapt Lights Out into a feature. The film centers around a mentally ill woman called Sophie, who discovers she and her children are being pursued by a spirit who can only be seen in shadow. Although the effects in the short were very simple, this was due to budgetary concerns. Because this feature had a lot more money behind it, it would have been easy for Sandberg to rely on CGI for the supernatural sequences. Fortunately, the esteemed filmmaker focused more on practical effects and authentic lighting to make the paranormal scenes more convincing. What makes Lights Out scarier than the traditional horror film is how it highlights the drama with the family more than the metaphysical. If we saw a ghost every 5 minutes, we would be desensitized to it. Because Lights Out emphasizes Sophie's struggle with her mental instability, you get invested in her plight, which makes it far more unexpected when her family is suddenly attacked by a killer ghost. Number 9, Critters, 86 minutes. Critters opens with a group of aliens called Krites crash landing on Earth. When a kid called Brad Brown finds the extraterrestrials in his home, he does everything he can to protect his family. Even though Critters looks pretty dumb, it has a lot of positive qualities. It has a surprisingly good cast, including a pre-fame Billy Zane. Also, Scott Grimes, who's best known for playing Gordon on The Orville, is solid as the lead character. Although the titular furbles are built up from the opening scene, the movie takes its time showing them, which makes their introduction more suspenseful. Unlike most movie aliens, these monstrous creatures are surprisingly distinguished. They have a creative look, a unique attack, and showcase a range of different personalities. Because critters are small, furry, vicious, critters, many assumed this horror comedy was a rip-off of Gremlins, which only came out 2 years prior. Rest assured, Critters isn't a copy of anything. Without spoiling anything, this cult classic is way weirder than you can possibly imagine. If you're looking for a horror that's a little bit zany, Critters is definitely for you. Number 8, Child's Play, 87 minutes. Over the years, Child's Play has spawned a ton of sequels, a remake and a TV series. Also, Chucky's cameo in Ready Player One was absolutely hilarious. Because most of these entries have ranged from underwhelming to borderline unwatchable, it's easy to forget how good the original actually is. Despite the fact the franchise leans into tongue-in-cheek territory upon every entry, Child's Play is a straightforward horror. There's not that many campy moments and the one-liners are kept to a minimum. Although Brad Dourif kills it as Chucky in every film, he's never been more entertaining or terrifying than in the one that started it all. Would you believe Arrested Development's Jessica Walter was originally cast? No, seriously. Even though jump scares are regarded as lazy, they are highly effective in Child's Play since you genuinely believe Chucky has popped his clogs 2 or 3 times. Just when you think it's all over, the gingerhead doll springs back to life. If you're not a major fan of Chucky, you should still give Child's Play a watch. It may not be perfect, but it's inarguably the best of the franchise. Number 7, RABID, 89 minutes. David Cronenberg's RABID opens with Rose getting into a motorcycle accident, forcing her to undergo an experimental surgical procedure to survive. At first, the operation appears to be successful, but after Rose develops a craving for human flesh, she begins biting passers-by, turning them into rabid flesh eaters. Also, she infects people with a stinger that stems from an orifice under her armpit. After all, this wouldn't be a Cronenberg feature if there wasn't some weird body horror in it. What differentiates RABID from traditional zombie flicks is the fact that the infected in this film are alive and still have their personality intact while they gorge on human flesh. In a way, this makes the story more disturbing, since Rose is aware of the evil she's committing but is unable to stop herself. Although RABID is gory, it's the way society reacts to the virus that leaves you feeling disgusted. As the epidemic grows out of control, government officials start shooting potential spreaders, making the elite appear less humane than the infected. It may have received a mixed reception upon its release, but RABID has aged surprisingly well and is way better than the 2019 remake. Number 6. Il or Them, 77 minutes. As far as premises go, Il couldn't be simpler. One night, a school teacher named Clementine is woken up in the night when she hears music outside. When she and her husband head out to investigate, they find their car has been stolen. When they return home, they discover their electricity has been cut, so they can't tell the police. To make matters worse, Clementine notices a group of hooded figures following her. Because so many modern horrors highlight showy effects and excessive gore, it's nice to see a haunting thriller focus entirely on ramping up the tension. Once the scares start, they don't let up until the credits roll. Because of this, watching Il isn't just scary, it's exhausting, but in a good way. In the hands of an inexperienced director, watching our leads scurrying around in the dark for over an hour could have been boring. But due to effective camera work, eerie soundtrack, and creepy sound effects, you can't help be gripped by David Moreau and Xavier Palud's movie. Number 5. The Beyond, 87 minutes. The Beyond centers around a woman called Liza who's preparing to renovate a hotel she's recently inherited. The refurbishment is a lot harder than Liza assumed, since sections of the building are dilapidated and infested with spiders. Oh, and the hotel is built on a gateway to hell. That also poses a bit of an issue. The Beyond may have been panned upon its release, but it's now regarded as Lucio Fulci's finest work. The unearthly score and the disorienting cinematography keeps you constantly on edge, even when nothing particularly scary is happening. The practical effects for the gore is as creative as Evil Dead. If you have a fear of tarantulas, it's possible the scene with the man-eating arachnids will give you a heart attack. Rather than introducing the supernatural elements gradually, things get freaky almost immediately after Liza arrives at the hotel. Even though The Beyond is filled to the brim with ghosts, creepy crawlies, and zombie wizards, Fulci's work is a gothic horror rather than a conventional spook fest, since it focuses more on atmosphere and suspense, leaving viewers in a permanent state of dread. Number 4. Terrified, 89 minutes. Terrified is a supernatural horror from Argentina which revolves around a paranormal expert called Walter. After seeing a ghost in his own house, Walter teams up with a group of researchers to investigate the paranormal phenomena that's plaguing the neighborhood. As frightening as Terrified is, it's more disturbing when the film goes against the grain. After a boy is killed, his corpse rises from his grave and shambles back to his house. Instead of screaming or attacking civilians, the child sits at his dinner table motionlessly for an agonizing 6 minutes. Because you have to stare at this decomposing child for the entire scene, you can't help feeling uncomfortable. Another trope that Terrified avoided is the character in denial. Because the evidence for the supernatural is overwhelming, pretty much everyone accepts the area is haunted. If you're sick and tired of movie characters disbelieving everything the hero says, you'll be relieved to hear Terrified doesn't bother with that cliché. Terrified also proves that timing and sound effects are more efficient tools at evoking real fear than shock gore. If you don't leap out of your seat at least once at Terrified's out-of-nowhere jump scares, then you must have nerves of steel. Number 3. Sauna, 83 minutes. Now before you ask, yes, Sauna is a film that centers around a haunted sauna, and no, it's not a parody. As laughable as this premise sounds, this Finnish flick is a must-watch for horror fanatics. Taking place at the end of the Russo-Swedish War, two brothers are tasked with marking the area, which is now under Swedish rule. On their travels, they discover a sauna in the middle of a swamp. Guilty of the lives they took in battle, the siblings agree to use the sauna, believing it will wash away their sins. Shortly after entering it, they discover that it is occupied by a spectre, who's eager to remind them of the evil they committed. Like The Lighthouse and Donnie Darko, Sauna explains very little, leaving many scenes up to interpretation. Due to the non-linear structure, some viewers might struggle to follow the story. But because the plot is told in such a haphazardous manner, you can never tell what's going to happen next, so you're never ready when things go nuts. If you enjoy films that don't spell everything out for you, Sauna will be right up your alley. Number 2. Eyes Without a Face, 87 minutes. In Eyes Without a Face, a girl called Christine is left disfigured after a car accident, forcing her father, a surgeon, to find a new face for her by any means necessary. Despite being regarded as a horror classic, Eyes Without a Face has no scares for the first 30 minutes. It spends so much time detailing Christine's dilemma you could initially mistake the film as a drama. But when the horror kicks in, it comes in full swing with a grotesque face transplant scene. Because the director had a firm knowledge of slaughterhouses and made a documentary about the subject, he used his own experience to ensure gory scenes such as this one looked grisly but authentic. Although the father falls into the mad scientist archetype, he never comes across as a caricature. Due to Pierre Brasseur's subdued performance, you can't help feeling sorry for him, even though his means to remedy his daughter's condition are abominable. Because of Christine's unbearable predicament, you can't really blame her for allowing her father to perform his horrific experiments. However, it's only in the movie's final moments when we learn whether she's willing to embrace or condemn her father's methods. Number 1. A Quiet Place, 89 minutes. In A Quiet Place, the Abbott family are forced to live in silence after the world is decimated by aliens with hypersensitive hearing. Because of the premise, it's no surprise that the majority of the movie has minimal dialogue. Even though a movie without sound could come across as gimmicky, A Quiet Place is the best kind of horror: beautiful, inventive, touching, and downright terrifying. Never in the history of cinema has the sound of a footstep filled you with so much dread. It's impossible to relax while watching, even when it looks like the Abbotts aren't in danger. While the family are playing board games and relaxing at home, you are always aware the slightest noise will result in their immediate demise. Although the best horrors can falter in the third act, the climax of A Quiet Place is an emotional rollercoaster that's sure to leave you reeling. And that concludes our list. If you think we missed any, then do let us know in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also, head over to Twitter and follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with What Culture. I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon.